if you are newly unemployed and want to apply for benefits, you may just have to undergo a drug test. Why? Well, on Tuesday, the Senate had passed a House Joint Resolution 42. Now, what this does is that it repeals an Obama-era regulation that limited the degree to which states can drug test people applying for unemployment benefits. So this happened in 2012. Obama passed this rule, which was part of the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act. What this rule did is that it says you can't just drug test people that are applying for unemployment. You have to have a reason. You have to have some sort of suspicion that they're actually using drugs. If not, it's an invasion of privacy. It's against the Fourth Amendment. Well, Obama had that passed, and the Republicans have said, no, we want your employers to drug test you no matter what. We want the government to drug test you no matter what. You know why? Well, I'll get into that, actually. Now, this was more narrowly defined in 2016, this 2012 rule from President Obama. It said that states could only test people for applying for unemployment benefits if they were fired from a job for using illegal substances, or if they were applying for a job that required drug testing. So again, now, because of this, the government can drug test you for signing up to receive unemployment insurance benefits. Now, that seems a bit unconstitutional. Now, I'll get to that, but there are some other problems that I want to address first. One of them is how they actually passed this damn thing. Now, it's reported that Congress was able to overturn the law by utilizing something called the Congressional Review Act. Now, that offers a method of changing recently implemented federal regulation by a simple majority. So, instead of needing 2/3 of Congress to be able to get rid of this regulation, they were actually able to override it using a 51-48 simple majority vote. And that's exactly what they did. So since the Republicans hate rules, they end up using arcane Senate rules to change the rules so they can get rid of the rules. You kind of see how this works? So they want to say, hey, let's get rid of this. Let's change the rules so we don't even need the Democrats. Yeah, because fuck them guys. We just want to get rid of this rule because we hate regulations. What happened to bipartisanship, by the way? Now, that went out the window as soon as the Republicans stopped being in the minority. You see, the Democrats, they wouldn't even dream of doing this, of using the Congressional Review Act. Oh, I do declare we need consensus. I must appeal to my Republican colleagues and show them the error of their ways. That doesn't work. See, the Republicans don't give a damn about consensus. They don't give a damn about bipartisanship. No, they get into power and they say, all right, we're in power now. You're going to follow our rules, bitch. The hell with bipartisanship. If we don't need you, then we don't need you, and we're going to bypass you. We are going to crush you. And that's exactly what they're doing. We're going to get rid of these regulations. We're going to get rid of these rules. We're going to shove our legislation down your throat. You don't hear the Democrats ever doing anything like that. No. No, like, for example, let's take the health care bill, right? Let's take Obamacare, right? So Obamacare was slightly more progressive and had public option. And in order to get the centrist Democrats and to try to get some Republican votes, they made it more conservative. They said, okay, we're going to drop public option. We're going to make it a little bit more conservative so that you can sign on. What happened? Republicans? Nope, 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 nope. Even though this is kind of our plan, this is a conservative healthcare plan, we are not going to agree at all. Because our job, and Mitch McConnell had said this, is to make sure that we do everything in our power, obstruct, to make sure that President Obama is a one-term president. And that obstruction did not stop. It went through until the very end of the Obama administration. Sad. Again, bipartisanship doesn't exist anymore. And now they're trying to ram through the Obamacare repeal. They're trying to do this through reconciliation, which again only requires a simple majority. They cannot filibuster, but they also can't get rid of the entire thing, because reconciliation it's not a perfect way of repeal. So they can't get rid of all of it, but they can get rid of parts. So that's a very important distinction to put down. So now let's get to the criticism of removing this regulation. Because you might think, hey, man, look, I understand all that, Jeff, but what's wrong with drug testing people to make sure that they're not on drugs when they get federal money? I don't want my tax money going to druggies. Okay, well, look, I understand that. And at first it sounds like it might be actually a reasonable position. But here's why it's not. Now, first off, that whole frame of reference right there is basically assuming that people on these types of programs, which are welfare programs, are all drug-addled losers that can't keep their jobs. I mean, certainly you might know one or two people that fit that bill. I mean, to be honest, I think we all know at least one of those guys. However, the data, according to data, those anecdotal accounts don't really fit the national trend or the national data. You might know one or two of those people. Doesn't mean that they're the majority. Doesn't mean that there's a lot of them, right? It doesn't mean that there's enough of them to justify these kinds of draconian programs. In fact, according to Think Progress, statistics from states with these drug testing programs actually show a lower drug usage rate among welfare recipients than the general population. And there is also research in various states that supports this data that says, wait a minute, you know, the stereotype of the poor unemployed person or the person on welfare being a drug, you know, somebody who's hooked on drugs, and that's why they can't keep a job, that's why they need the welfare. It's actually not true. They have lower rates. You know why? Because they're too busy keeping themselves alive, paying their rent, getting food on the table, etc., etc. They're not out there buying all sorts of drugs. Not in most circumstances. And again, there are exceptions to these rules, but these exceptions are very minor and very tiny. Let me show you how tiny they are, actually. According to box screening efforts by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, found that out of 7,600 welfare recipients, only 21 had tested positive for any type of drug. In 2012, when Utah drug tested welfare recipients, only 12 people out of 466 tested positive for drugs. And USA Today reports that out of the 87,000 welfare recipients drug tested in Arizona, only one person had tested positive. These are the results. These were the programs that were done by conservative states, and they found a handful of people out of almost 100,000 that were using drugs. So basically, the very drug testing that they've been doing debunks the argument that they use to try to justify drug testing people in order to get so-called entitlements. The research in the data says this does not work, this is not effective. So why push for more? I think you already know the answer. Say it with me. Follow the money. According to the National Employment Law Project, in 2015, 10 states spent over $850,000 on testing welfare recipients and found only 321 positive results. Again, spending so much money, almost $1 million, $850,000, and found that 321 positive results. That is a handful. Furthermore, according to NELP, Texas estimated for the drug test program would cost the state $30 million a year. So you would be spending more money for these tests than you'll save by not giving out welfare to people who might actually be doing drugs. So it's incredibly inefficient. But it's not about saving money. These laws are essentially there that are set up to enrich drug testing companies by enforcing negative stereotypes about poor people. Oh, look at all those poor people getting all this welfare. You want to make sure that they're not druggies, that they're not misusing your hard-earned tax dollars? Well, give all your tax money to me and we'll test them. We'll test them to see whether or not they've been doing drugs. That's what this is about. It's not about saving money. It's a classic head fake. Again, Look at those poor people. We got to test them to make sure that they're not doing drugs with your money. And of course, that works. That works because we have these stereotypes of poor people. And this is done while they're picking your pocket. Now, earlier I mentioned that this also might be unconstitutional. Now, the argument that I get when I say you shouldn't drug test welfare recipients is, why not? First of all, it's my money. And we don't want the, druggies on welfare getting my money. And also, the other criticism I hear is, hey, my workplace can drug test me. Why shouldn't the government be able to do that? Well, because the government isn't a private employer, and it actually doesn't possess that right under the Constitution. You see, there's this little thing called the Fourth Amendment that doesn't allow the government to search and seize you without reasonable cause. Now, the rule that was there before involved reasonable cause. It allowed them to drug test people who had tested positive before. This removes that and says, no, we could drug test you without any sort of reasonable cause. Now, of course, in this case, what's a reasonable cause? It's getting caught in the job, caught doing drugs in the job. If you're too busy smoking a joint when you're on the job, when you're supposed to be, working, and you end up getting fired for it, well, then yes, I agree, you should drug test them. If they want to get welfare, then okay, you have reasonable cause to be able to do that. Perfectly reasonable, everybody gets that. But see, when you do it without a reasonable cause, then it becomes unconstitutional. In fact, in 2013, a federal court struck down a Florida law mandating drug testing for welfare benefits because it violated the Fourth Amendment. So not only is it an attack on privacy, it's also an attack on the poor and a giant subsidy for drug testing companies. This is why this is a bad idea. Now, a lot of that isn't going to matter to Republicans because, again, many of them believe that poverty isn't a problem. It's a character flaw. It's not a societal problem. It is a character flaw. You're an immoral person if you're poor. If you lose your job, you've done something wrong. You're immoral. If you fall on hard times, it's because you're a bad person and God hates you. Some of them believe this stuff, man. So, since you're such an immoral person, you are morally bankrupt, then why should we in the government help you with our tax money? No, here are some bootstraps. Stop doing drugs. Stop being lazy. Go out and get a job and stop being morally bankrupt. Find Jesus. And then you will no longer be poor. That's what this is about. And of course, there's a racial angle to this as well. The stereotypical unemployed person who is doing drugs is almost always considered to be black, going all the way back to Reagan with the welfare queens. So again, racial angle, right? And that's what a lot of this welfare stuff is about. They go after the welfare because, again, a lot of people think that it's just African Americans when it's not. There's a lot of white people on welfare, and there happens to be a major drug problem among the white population, a heroin issue. In fact, rural white Americans are facing a huge heroin or opioid epidemic going on right now in the heartland of the country. So, I mean, this has a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems in this bill. We're not winning with this bill. We're not winning with this legislation. But unfortunately, it has gone through the Senate already. It's passed, and it's going to arrive on Trump's desk, where he is almost certainly going to sign it. However, there is some hope. The ACLU does have plans to challenge this. So they will challenge this. So they're going to bring this to court. They're going to test its constitution and see if it passes constitutional muster. So, but the whole point here, though, is Republicans. You think they really believe in the Constitution? No. What they believe in is whatever helps them demonize the poor and help pay multinational corporations. And, of course, helps them pay less in taxes. That's what this is about. So don't believe it. It's not about saving the government money. It doesn't save any money. It actually costs more money. And it's, again, just another method to demonize poor people. Don't forget that. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.